Hello everyone. Welcome to season 2 of the Premed podcast. Today we're glad to have Dr. Scott Calvin here with us. Dr. Calvin is the Premed advisor, in fact, pre-health advisor at Lehman College in the City University of New York. And today we're very privileged to have you, Dr. Calvin. Welcome to the Premed Lifeboat.
Thanks a lot, before. It's great to be here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So please tell us a little bit about you. Like, who is Dr. Calvin?
I didn't follow a straight line to get here. I was an undergraduate way back in the day. I'm not necessarily going to tell you how long ago. And it burned me out. I did okay, but it burned me out. I thought I was going to head to grad school right away when I started, but I wasn't ready for it. So I thought I was maybe going to try to be a writer, but I also ran my own tutoring business for 8 years. So I was tutoring pre-med courses. I was tutoring some MCAT stuff. I was doing those kinds of things. I was a physics major as an undergrad. After 8 years, I saw some attractive things at Curie, and actually decided to go back and get my PhD at Curie, which I did, PhD in physics. Did some things after that, was professor at Sarah Lawrence, and then actually got in touch with one of the faculty members I'd worked with in grad school when I was a grad student, who was in the chemistry department at Hunter College at the time, is now the dean of the sciences at Lehman, Pam Mills, and she knew there was this opening for a pre-med advisor. So I kind of switched careers again. I'd done a lot of advising at Sarah Lawrence. I had done a lot of MCAT work. I'd written some MCAT prep books, that kind of thing. And so I kind of slid into the new position, worked my way up to director of the program. We do have another advisor now. Dr. Lydia Williams is part of our crew.
Yeah.
And so here I am. As I say, it hasn't been a straight line, but it's been a good line. And I'm glad to be doing it.
Nice. Okay, so before we talk about your college experience, let's talk about high school. I'm curious to know, who was Dr. Calvin back in high school?
It's funny.
Yeah.
I went to an academic high school, meaning I was on the West Coast, but the kind of equivalent to Bronx Science. In other words, it's public school, right?
Yeah.
But you had to have grades and stuff to get in. And I was not one of the top students there, but I know that the people there thought of me as kind of, smart or whatever, which was kind of funny for me because I had to work like hell in those classes. And I did not do well in chemistry. Chemistry was tough for me. I got by far the lowest score in my chemistry class, by far. They passed me because it was an honors chemistry course. So, it's being at the bottom of the higher group instead of whatever, right? But still, lowest score in that. So that was me in high school. I hung out with kind of I don't know if you quite call them outsiders, but sort of like that. We hung out in the auditorium, we played cards between classes. There was a big spirit contest, as high schools have, between the seniors, the juniors, the sophomores, and the freshmen.
Oh, wow.
And one year we went as kind of none of the above and formed like a fifth class.
Oh, that's interesting.
The amazing thing, if I remember the story right,
yeah,
we came in ahead of one of the other four classes in the spirit.
Wait, really? Wow.
Yeah, I think we came in fourth out of 5.
Oh, wow.
But I think
that's impressive. Yeah.
So that was funny. And then after we'd been there a little while, the principal said, okay, you've had your fun. You can either stay here and join one of the classes, or you can go back, leave. And we left. We went out in front of the auditorium and hung out for the rest of the time. Yeah, so that was me in high school.
Yeah. Did you play any sports back in high school or no?
Not for the school.
Okay.
I did play soccer in like youth leagues and that kind of thing.
Nice.
And I tried to keep that up. I moved from the suburbs to the city. The competition was much higher in the city. I stopped after a while. So yeah, but I wasn't on a high school team or anything like
Right. Okay. All right. So let's go into college, right?
that.
How was college?
College was actually kind of miserable. I
Oh,
loved high school, by the way. I want to kind of put that in. I know it seems like
okay.
everybody's one way or the other. Either they like high school and they don't
Or
like
hate
college, or
it.
they like college and they don't like high school. I really liked high school. I really enjoyed it there. College was just alienating for me. The college I went to, people transferred in and out a lot. I mean, I know Lehman
Mm,
has a lot of people transfer in, but they don't have as many people transfer out.
out. Right.
So you'd make friends, and a year later they'd be gone. And people would change majors a lot, and they would change housing a lot, and it just the first year was okay, and then it felt like being a first year student, like a freshman every year. And that's no fun after a while.
Right.
I stuck with it. In retrospect, I actually kind of wish I was one of the people who transferred out, but I got my degree. I did fine. As I mentioned earlier, though, it did have me burned out. My plan of going immediately on to grad school, I was like, I'm not ready for this.
Yeah.
So that was my undergraduate experience.
Okay. Okay. And you spoke about your tutoring business. Um, what would you say are some transferable skills that you got from that experience into becoming a pre-health advisor?
Tons, right? I mean, I really got to see from the individual student side what people were trying to do, where they were getting hung up, what their backup plans were in a kind of way that I wouldn't if I just started in the job I had now.
Mm,
Because if somebody, I mean, I saw everything. I saw people had great professors. Saw people who had professors who probably should have been fired. Uh, and I would see people change schools, and I would still be with them, right? So I kind of
mm,
see that transition. So it was just, I hear how they talked about what they'd let their guard down a little with a tutor in a way that they might not always with an advisor. And so I really did learn a lot doing that.
okay. Okay. That's nice. That's nice. Now about MCAT. Let's just dive straight into the MCAT.
Yep.
About the MCAT books and the companies, like the different companies, like do you have a preference for a specific company or a specific book? Like what is your
So let
thought
me
on that?
start with my conflict of interest statement, right?
Okay.
I have written books for exam crackers. I have worked with exam crackers.
Yeah.
I still get royalties off of one of the books that I help them with. I've written books. I've co-written a book. I've edited some books for them. That's what I should say. So one of the books that I co-wrote, I still get royalties off of. That used to be a lot of money. Lately, they've been phasing that book out. So the last check I got from them was $36, which, maybe I'll go out to a decent dinner someplace. But
Right.
you know, at any rate, I still get some
Yeah.
from them. Having said that, I have learned two things about commercial products for prepping for MCATs.
Mm,
One is that it's best to have a mix of stuff from different companies for two reasons. One is that they have different strengths, but the other is if you overlearn one company, then whatever quirks they have, you've learned their quirks and you're not kind of learning the test. So you want to have a mix of things. The other thing that I've learned is that people have different kinds of needs, different things that they need to work on, and different companies are good at that.
mm.
I will throw out a few names. I don't want all the test prep companies to call me up next week and start giving me, you didn't say this, but I'll throw out a few names just to give examples.
Yeah.
Start with exam crackers. That's the one that I've done work with,
Yeah.
right? They're focused at people who have a pretty good grounding in the courses.
Mm,
The material's not going to seem completely unfamiliar to them, and need some help with focusing on test strategies, and want to move from scores that aren't quite good enough to get into medical school to scores that are good enough to get into medical school.
okay.
That's the focus area. Contrast it with, say, Kaplan. Kaplan is really aimed at people who have huge holes in their content. Right? I took a bunch of my courses during the pandemic, and I took them online, and I did okay, but I felt like I was just like looking up where to do things and putting it in, not cheating, but just kind of, and I didn't really learn anything. And now I feel like I'm learning things that I need to put it in, right? That's what Kaplan's great for. Kaplan's great for poking this hole. By the way, of course, all the companies will tell you that they're all great for everything, right? But you can't be great for everything. You got to be focused. Altius seems to be good at taking people who have high scores already and want super high scores because they're hoping for a top 10 school, or they're doing PhD, MD, PhD, or whatever, right? So these different companies are aimed at different places. But as I said, also, I think you want to make a mix. You don't want to go all in with one company. I will say Blueprint has the best sample tests and diagnostics. In that area, they are the best. So even if you're using Kaplan material to review your weak spots or whatever it might be, or exam crackers material to kind of teach you test strategies, Blueprint has the best diagnostic tests, right? And since getting a full course from one of these where you go into a classroom and you talk to, it's $3,000 or whatever, you're much better spending $700 and getting some of the material from one and some of the material from another and some of the material from one more, right? And kind of making a package that works for you. There are things that are free, Anki for flashcards, for example. Jack Weston has practice passages that are free, right? So you kind of make this basket, and that's the best way to do it.
Right. Thank you for that input. What do you think about Princeton and UWorld?
I'm going to be totally honest. I don't have a read on Princeton. Okay. They seem to change their material fairly often. They have a great promotional department, so people bring them up to me all the time. Huge. I don't talk to many people who use Princeton as a primary material. I just don't. Maybe the material's good because, as I say, they do freshen it up a lot. I just don't have a clear read on them, and I don't have people coming to me saying, yeah, I did Princeton and it was great. UWorld, I do have people saying that. UWorld, of course, is individual questions, right? It's not study guides. It's not
a book,
full practice exams. It is individual questions. And that's a category of thing you need. I mean, let me say this. Here's the categories of things that you need. You need practice tests and diagnostics. You probably want practice passages beyond that aren't assembled into full tests, but let you practice the passage format. You probably need practice questions just to get used to material and stuff. You need study guides that are telling you how to strategize for the test. How do you take the test? How do you set up your study plan? That sort of thing. You need something to make flashcards, right? Those can come from different places. UWorld is great for those standalone questions. It doesn't have the other pieces, but those standalone questions, they're great.
Right. Okay, so you would say that, hey, like cast your net wide and, I guess test your feet in all of the different.
Cast your net wide, take the buffet. Right. Don't try to go for the filet mignon, and not everything else on your plate. Right. Go to the buffet, take some of this, some of that, some of this, some of that. That'll prepare you for the test better because, as I say, you won't get over dependent on one test strategies. Again, I'll talk about exam crackers because they're the ones I worked with. They do very well at matching what the actual test is like, except they don't put in any easy questions. That's a conscious decision because they want to focus on getting people from almost there to there. But they don't put in an easy question. So if all you ever do is exam crackers, then when you take the actual test, the easy questions can actually psych you out. Because you can be like, that must be a trick. That's too easy. No, there are some easy questions like that. Right? So, if you used exam crackers for things that exam crackers is really good at, and they're really good at some things. Their CARS advice, for example, I think is terrific. But then you're using Blueprint to do more sample exams or something like that. You're seeing some of the easier questions. You're kind of getting a better picture. So yeah, that I think is the way to go.
Right. And of course, like the AMC is the best source
Oh,
when it comes to like the practice material. So, right,
gold standard in terms of fidelity, in terms of
right.
being like the real test, because there are people who make the real
They
test.
make it right,
They
right, right.
make it. Now, the
Yeah.
problems with the double AMC materials, there's not enough of it.
Hmm.
People think I'm on the assistance program, it doesn't cost me a dime. I'll just use the double AMC material. Only
Right.
like 4 full-length exams. It changes a little year to year, but only like 4 full-length exams. That's not really enough.
Mm.
I know we're going to talk about misconceptions in a little bit. I'll let you ask me, and I'll tell you why 4 isn't enough. But it's not really enough. So that's great, but you
Yeah.
need beyond that. And the other thing about double AMC is that they will give you explanations for questions, but they won't give you a lot of strategies.
Mm.
It just feels weird. They write the test and then telling you the strategies for dealing with the test just feels
Yeah.
weird. Right? So they don't give you a lot of that. And so you need somebody, Princeton or exam crackers or some Kaplan strategies aren't very good. It's not their strong point. Altius, whatever. You need somebody who's going to give you some strategies for approaching it.
Mm. More practice does not hurt. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the different sections on the MCAT. And what you think is the best strategy to beat each, I guess. Yeah. In that sense.
So 2 big lessons off the bat that people don't always think about. One is that the MCAT is inherently review, right? Now you got to learn how to use the format, you got to do all that stuff, but these are things you've had in classes.
Mm-hmm.
So do not devise yourself a study plan where you are spending an equal amount of time on each topic, because some topics you already know and some are really hard for you. I would bet that 90% of the people listening to this podcast, for example, are comfortable with basic stoichiometry, balancing chemical equations, things like that, right? You don't have to spend the same amount of time on that as you do on acid-base equilibria, which is also from general chemistry, but may feel a little more shaky, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is hit each topic more than once, right? Think of it as preparing for, you talked about athletics, right? Think of it as preparing for a big game in whatever sport that you're in, right? I'm not going to go as a soccer player and go do drills and get a coach for shots on goal once and then go on and do passing drills once and then train as a defender once, right? It's not the way you
Total
do.
failure.
You gotta keep coming back,
Right.
right? And most people, when they sit down to do the MCAT, look at this huge list of topics, divide it up and hit each one once. No way. Build it in. The first time through, you're probably making flashcards, you're sorting it out, you're doing notes, then you practice some stuff with it. Then don't try to fix everything right away. Go, okay. 3 weeks later, you've done other things. Come back. Say, what went wrong in the practice stuff? Let me work on that a little bit, right? Theories of learning. You learn better if you sort of start to forget and then come back to it. Start to forget and then come back to it. You try to put it all at once, it goes in short-term memory, it's gone again.
Yeah.
So, hit things more than once. That's the biggie for all the sections. And don't spend equal amounts of time on everything. Spend more time on things that you need to spend more time on, right?
Right.
One more tip along those lines. Don't get obsessed with the hardest questions on the test. You are not, almost certainly, you're not being kept out of anywhere because you got a 129 on a section instead of a 132. It's not keeping you out, right? So those questions, the very top end, the hardest questions, are making the difference between a 129 and 132. And they can eat up all your energy and time because they're super hard. If you are practicing as a basketball player, you don't spend all your time trying to sink those shots from half court in practice.
Steph Curry.
Right? Yeah. Well, even him. I mean, go back to the 3-point line, right? But,
Right. Like,
he didn't the hard one, right? He's the 132,
right.
right? But if you watch him in practice, he's
Yep.
not
He
practicing every shot from back there,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Before the game, he goes out. I mean, I am a Warriors fan. I got my cap around here somewhere.
Hey, go Warriors.
Yeah, I've got no, I got a giant thing over there, but
Yeah.
yeah, so you don't do that, right? You got to go and practice. You got to practice, your 10-foot jumper, right? You got to do these things. And the same thing on the MCAT. You do not get consumed by those super hard questions. What you need to do is get the easy questions right every time. Don't let them fool you. And be able to make a lot of progress on those medium questions. And this is one place Blueprint's good. It divides them out for you. You can see which one's in which category.
Right.
And that's the thing to do. Anyway.
Thank you so much. Rich information. Okay. So Dr. Calvin, throughout your career as a pre-health advisor, let's focus on like the pre-meds for today. But what mistakes have you seen, say, freshmen make a lot? We walk through all the different 4 years, of college, but let's talk about freshmen first. Like, what mistakes have you seen them make a lot?
So there's two kind of opposite mistakes they make. I guess you can talk about it as erring in two directions off of the same problem.
Okay.
One is that you get the ones who spread themselves way too thin right away. And so they kind of dig themselves a deep hole right away because they're trying to do research and be involved in the community and be doing stuff with clubs and be getting clinical experience and taking a whole bunch of classes and all this kind of stuff. And that's when the C- or the F or the whatever, right, is popping up. They can recover from that.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world, but it is digging a hole that they don't have to dig, right? The other side of that, which is maybe more of a sophomore problem than a freshman problem, but I'll mention it too, is people who think that to get into medical school, you need a 3.98 or something. Okay. A lot of people get into medical school. You can look at the national statistics. AAMC puts them out. A lot of people get into medical school with a 3.3, a 3.4 GPA. That's fine. And so you get people who are so worried about their grades that either they never do anything else, so they don't have anything else to show, or at some point pressure gets the better of them and they cheat or something, right? And I hate it. When I see, it's not good when anybody cheats.
At all.
But when a person is getting a 3.7, cheats in a class in order to avoid getting a B- in that class,
it's over.
You might have been okay, right? The cheating is a problem. You can recover eventually from it. If you cheat as don't do it. But if you cheat as a freshman,
do it.
And you do well after that, and you show that you're remorseful, and you kind of are willing to talk about it and all that, med schools may still take you if they believe you. It's not necessarily the total end of the line.
If they believe you, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Boy, did you do it. And like I say, it's when the 3.7s do that because they're worried about 1 B- or something. That is a bad move. So those are the two things I'd say for freshmen. Want me to go on to sophomores?
Yes, sir. Sophomores. Actually, let me ask you this before we move on to sophomores. Do you remember the first day I walked into your office as a freshman?
I'd have to look at my notes.
Probably not. Yeah.
I see a lot of people, and specifically think I feel like I've known you, all my life, right? I mean, we've been working together a long time. So I don't specifically.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Why? What were you gonna say?
Okay, let's move on to sophomores. Yeah.
Okay. So sophomores. mistakes people make as sophomores.
Mm.
Sophomore is a pretty forgiving year in some ways, but people don't start trying to think outside the classroom sometimes. I think that's the most common one I see as a sophomore.
Mm.
It's not, it doesn't derail them the way some of the things I talked about for first years can, but it can kind of cost them a year, right? Maybe they weren't going to take a gap year. Now they've done it to themselves. So in sophomore year, people should be starting to try to get clinical experience and things like this.
Right.
I'll tell you a story about a student who's now so long ago that I don't think this is identifiable, so I don't think it should be embarrassing for them or anything.
Okay.
Student who had a 4.0 was a sophomore, right? Didn't have any clinical experience yet. Not unusual. It's fine. But I told her to start being on lookout for it, right? Mm-hmm. And I happened to, this doesn't happen all the time, but I happened to hear about a doctor who knew an alum from Lehman, wanted to help people out, wanting to have somebody do a very kind of close shadowing, almost apprenticeship relationship, for a year or so. Yeah. And but do you know any good students who need that sort of thing? And I thought, yeah, right. Talk to the student, talk to the person, got them. So they met. The interview went well. Person got offered that position. It wasn't a paid position, but a nice position. Got offered a position. A few months later, I decided to kind of call up the person or email them and say, hey, how's that thing going? Right. And she said, oh, I didn't end up doing it.
What?
I know. That was the thing. I was like, what? And she said, oh, well, I worried it might interfere with my grades.
Wow. Okay.
Nobody's going to care if you got 1 B+ here. You got a 4.0, right?
Oh, man.
They're going to care if you don't have any clinical experience. Sure enough, I just lost track of her. She never applied to med school. She's probably very successful somewhere. I mean, I don't want to say that this is a bad outcome. Her heart was not in medicine, right?
Okay, understandable.
Her heart was in medicine. She could have thought this was the coolest thing ever. Her heart was not in medicine. More power to her, whatever she's doing, right? But so, that's kind of an extreme case. But I see people where if you ask them what they regret when they're juniors or seniors, right? They're like, yeah, I should have gotten some volunteer work or clinical experience or my EMT license or whatever I was going to do when I was a sophomore. Right. Now I'm sort of scrambling a little bit. And that's totally true for people when the pandemic hit them when they were juniors, because they're like, what do I do?
Yeah.
So that's what I'd say.
Crazy times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Juniors. I mean, that year you start thinking about the MCAT or that. What mistakes?
Yeah. So lots of mistakes people can make as juniors. And I'm going to cycle back to a mistake that people make as
sophomores,
freshmen and sophomores.
Freshmen. Okay.
It doesn't both as sophomores also, because it doesn't show up until they're juniors, and then they go, right? You got to have some professors who know who you are, right? Because when you're junior, you're going to start needing learner's recommendation. So if when you're a freshman or a sophomore, you haven't gone to any office hours or kind of struck up, but you don't have to glad hand them. You don't have to be a prof.
That's too much,
like that, right? But yeah, exactly. But I mean, establishing some sort of relationship, right? Going to office hours or ask them questions, or the online course, you can still do it. There's discussion boards and stuff, right? Get a relationship so they know who you are when you ask for a letter of recommendation, right?
Right.
So back to juniors. So juniors, it's all questions of timing is where people get into trouble here. Meaning, you got to be on top of the committee letter process if you're doing that. You got to figure out your MCAT timing. It's possible to study too long for the MCAT. If you spread it out too much, you're forgetting the stuff from the beginning by the time you get to the end, and it's not really sticking right. You have to be thinking about what schools you're going to be applying to if you're not taking a gap year, personal statements, all this kind of stuff. Yeah. So, you want to kind of sit down around the start of a junior year and really plan this out. And here is where advisors are super helpful. Or there's a new class, NSS 350, newish class at Lehman that walks you through this, right? Yep. You you want to be doing this sort of stuff. Not doing this sort of stuff is a big mistake. And it typically costs people a year. They push back the MCAT because they weren't ready for it. They're scrambling for letters of recommendation. They don't have it. They miss the committee letter deadlines. They're applying too late in the cycle. All these timing things get people in junior year. At the start of a junior year, sit down, work with an advisor, get things planned for how you're going to be doing things, because there's this whole set of things that have to be going on sort of at the same time.
Yeah.
And you got to work that out.
So seniors.
So seniors, let's say non-gap year seniors, right?
Yes.
Because a senior is going to do a gap year. Now you're back to being like a junior again, right?
Right.
So we're really talking about people in their application year. Well, applying too late in the cycle. Applying in September is like showing up for a Black Tuesday sale at 2:30 in the afternoon. The sale may technically still be on, but all the good stuff is gone.
Yeah.
Right. So you know, people apply too late. Then they apply unrealistically in various ways. You know, you want a good kind of mixed set of schools that they're applying to.
Yeah.
You know, they don't spend enough care on the secondary applications. Spend a lot of attention on primary, and then they try to just dash off secondaries, and they're no good, and they don't get the interviews.
Secondaries.
A very specific mistake people make. This is super specific, and yet I've seen it enough times I want to mention it.
Yes, sir.
Say somebody doesn't have any interviews in October, by October. It's okay. About half the people that we see who get into medical school from Lehman don't get the first interview until after the first of the year. So there's still hope. There's still a lot of hope. You're okay. But they get nervous and they think, I need a backup. And so they apply to a Caribbean school, which is just fine. Except if they apply to the Caribbean school in October, the Caribbean schools, many of them have January start dates. And what I've seen happen more than once is the Caribbean school says, great, you're admitted to our January class, take it or leave it. This is before they even know whether they're getting into the U.S. schools they apply to.
Wow.
Super awkward, right?
That's crazy.
Super awkward. And I've seen that happen. Flat out a mistake. And you know, just wait, right? You're going through the cycle. The Caribbean schools, if you want to go, have short cycles, right? If you decide you want to do a Caribbean school, wait until March. Right? And then you can apply then, and then you're actually applying for their fall start, same as you would have been the other way, and you don't get into this problem.
Right. That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. We've had more in common on that, and I really try to, and people have stopped from doing that, right? Because that is super awkward. Same, I'll give you one other mistake that people make in their application year. Is let's say they don't feel quite ready, but they sort of feel ready and they want to try it. That's fine. If they're going to do that, they should only apply to schools that they really want to go to. I've seen people apply to schools they're not that excited about in a year when they're thinking about, maybe I'm waiting until next year anyway. And then maybe they only get into the school they're not that excited about. Now, what do they do, right? A lot of times they end up telling that school, no, I'm going to take my chances again next year. Well, what do? You just burned a bridge, right? That school's not letting you back.
That's
and so, you know, if you're thinking in terms of 2 years of applications, you're saying, I'm going to try it this year, but I don't quite have enough clinical experience yet, or maybe I'm thinking of retaking the MCAT, or I'm going to take a few more class, whatever it is, right? And you think, and if I don't get in this year, I'll apply next year and I'll be super strong and I'll get in. Great plan. In that first year, only apply to schools you'd say yes to. Because otherwise they may let you in and you got a problem. Sounds weird, but you got a problem. So that's what I've seen coming.
Wow. Thank you for that that advice. So about research, what do you say about research? How important is research in you know, getting admitted into medical school?
in a way, not that important.
Mm.
Here's what is important. You have to have something that's not classes or clinical experience, right?
Yeah.
You have to have something that shows that you can handle a project, that you can handle yourself, that you can juggle your time. Now, that can be research, and research can be super good at that.
Mm.
It can be, and this was a national applicant to medical school, making ships in bottles. You know, those things where they got them on the, because that, like, nobody does that. Like, I'm going to try that this weekend, right? It takes a lot of work, takes a lot of learning, takes a lot of planning. And he like showed them at local art things or whatever, right? Did something with them, right? That's fine, right? It actually covers some of the same skills as research, right? Or you created a mentorship program for one of the clubs on campus. Not just I went to the club, right? But yeah, did something for them, right?
Right.
Or you started some cool business where you made things and sold them on eBay or something, right? Or whatever, right? Research is a way to do that. It's a very common way to do that. It's a good way to do that. Athletics, by the way, is another one. If you're serious about athletics, that kind of slots into that, because you've got to figure out when you're practicing and how you're juggling things, and you're traveling and you're doing all the stuff, right? That does it too. So, people always tell you how you have people on the pre-med lifeboat, right?
Yeah.
And they tell you they did to get into medical school, and they're right, but it doesn't mean everybody else has to do the same thing, right? The great thing about a podcast like yours is people can listen to all these stories.
Absolutely. That's the goal.
This person did this. They all have something
different,
right?
unique.
Maybe it's research, maybe it's not.
Right.
Now, having said that, there are particular medical schools that are research oriented. For those schools, research is super important, right? So Cornell tends to like people who did research, right? Mount Sinai, to some extent, tends to like people who did research.
Yeah.
Downstate likes people who were super involved in the community, right? In their local community, right? Different emphasis. They'll be happy if you did research. It shows you can do things and that sort of thing. And Cornell won't be happy if you were super involved in the community, but they have different priorities, right? Different missions. So if presumably you want to go to a school that's research heavy because you like research, which means you've done it, but you can kind of be aware of those things. But if your goal is, I want to be a doctor, research is not crucial if you have something else.
Right. A lot of these things, like, they kind of run into time management.
Yes.
What is your input on that? Because it's like, if you don't know how to manage your time, like, all this goes into the trash pretty much. Yeah.
Absolutely. You got to know yourself, right? You got to know what some people like having I remember when you asked me about when I was an undergraduate, I remember one of my classmates where we would laugh because he had everything planned out in this weekly planner he had, including things like go on a date. He didn't have a date yet, right? It was 3 weeks now. He's got a squad on it, right?
I like that.
That was him. It worked for him, right? You got to kind of find what works for you, because different people need different kinds of things. You do need time to relax. You do need time to unwind. You do need that time to deal with stress. Some people do need to remind themselves that they need to have that sort of scheduled in somehow. Others, the opposite, right? They got to remind themselves these specific times for work. I do tend to think that for most people that time management works better when you schedule for sometime each week for categories of things rather than each individual thing. And what I mean is, if you plan 3 hours a week when you are going to study organic chemistry, regardless of whether there's a test that week, regardless of whether there's homework that week, regardless of whatever, then you never have to worry about it fell below the priority level. This is the time you're supposed to be doing that.
Right.
If you have something, research or whatever, right? I'm going to do that these hours, right? Without having a specific task. I think people at first tend to think of time management as I'm going to be working on this paper. I'm going to be studying for this test. I'm going to be at my workplace. I'm going to be, helping my mom,
Cook
with
or
chores.
something,
I'm going to
right?
be whatever, right?
Yeah.
If you put some things that are a little less task oriented and a little more categories, I find for a lot of people that helps the things that are not an emergency get done. Studying material in a class, not like studying for a test, but just sort of going over the material, is never an emergency. There's always other stuff that needs to be done this week where that can wait another week. But if it always waits another week, it's a problem.
That's bad. Yeah.
Right? And a lot of these things are like this. If you are doing some project for a club or something, it can always wait another week. But if it always waits another week, it never gets done. Right? So, having those sorts of time carve outs, I find also increases kind of your sanity. I keep this up even in my day job. I mean, I've got other jobs. I'm teaching at night at Sarah Lawrence again. I'm doing things, right? But even in my day job, I have 4 hours a week, 1 hour a day on 4 of the 5 days. I have 4 hours a week that, if you look at my schedule, is for long-term projects. During those 4 hours, I don't allow myself to have appointments. I don't allow myself to deal with administrative things I've got to deal for that week. I don't allow myself to answer emails. Those 4 hours a week are, can I get a new affiliation agreement for Lehman? Can I get a new course that's going to help out students? Can I build out a new program? Right? If I didn't do that, those things would never happen. 4 hours a week is not going to kill me in terms of appointments and stuff, right? It's okay. But because of that 4 hours a week, I get this stuff done. People say, how do you find time to get this stuff done? I set out 4 hours a week.
Yeah. So know yourself, I guess.
Know yourself for sure, because it's going to be different for different people. But
that's true.
And then set up your time management so you're not overly crisis focused. Deal with the crises. You need to deal with the things that need to be done that week.
Right.
But you also need some time in there to pursue longer term things, or else longer term things never get done.
Right. Okay, Dr. Calvin. So let's talk about changing majors, like in college, because I've had some friends who did change their majors, but if you're not careful, you could run into some problems. So let's talk about that. Like, yeah.
I mean, it depends on, you gotta either be good going through a bulletin, and if you are, you're fine. You don't need any help. You can look at it, or you got to work with advisors to try to look at what the impacts are.
I would say go to get advisors.
Some people are fine at just doing this, going through the bulletin themselves. I don't think it is a sign of weakness or something that's going to bother medical schools or something. It's fine to change majors. There's a wide variety of categories of things that people do here, though. And you're talking about somebody who's pre-med, so I'm going to assume they're continuing to be pre-med.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Some majors have long chains of courses you need to take. And if you haven't started that long chain of courses and you're starting as a junior, you're going to add time. And add time that you maybe don't want to add. So, what's a major with a long chain of courses? Exercise science. Great major. If you're starting out as a freshman, if you're a sophomore, great major, right? If you're a junior pre-med who's been a biology major and you think, you know what, I'm really interested in sports medicine, I think I'm going to switch, right? I understand the impulse. It's a great major. But if you're switching as a junior, here's a sequence of courses that you need to finish that major where you need each one before the next one. Anatomy and Physiology 1, Anatomy and Physiology 2, Exercise Science 323, I forget what that is, but whatever it is. Exercise Science 326, the internship preparation course, and the internship. You're starting out in your junior year, you got a challenge if you haven't done the first one.
Huge.
And so if you're just kind of thinking, maybe I like sports medicine, maybe add it as a minor. Right? On the other hand, if you're starting your junior year and you're a biology major and you say, you know what, I think I really like chemistry. I think maybe I'm going to switch over to biochemistry. That may be pretty doable in that time interval. You just have to kind of look at what you're getting yourself into in terms of a specific change. And in those cases, maybe you found you like a particular thing or you don't like a particular thing and you want to make the shift, and you absolutely can. So.
Yeah, guys, always speak with your advisors. That's it. That's why they're
advisor, or be really good, like reading through all the material and figuring it out, right? I mean, school bulletins do tell you exactly what is the majors, but you can't look at the description. You really got to think this class to this class to this class to this class. And advisor really is best because there's subtleties like I've seen people, this is not pre-med so much, but I'm going to drop it in there. No, I've seen it for pre-meds. I've seen pre-meds who have been maybe the other way. They've been exercise science. They're going along fine. Everything's great, right? But they're like, you know what? I think I want to be a bio major. And in their junior year, they decide they want to be a bio major. And maybe they don't decide until 5 weeks into their junior year. Well, there are 2 general bio courses they need to take before they can do the rest of the bio. If they haven't done that, only one of them is offered in spring. The other one's offered in fall. You start getting into what's offered in spring, what's offered in fall, sequencing issues. Maybe they're adding time, right? So there are questions of what courses are offered when. Environmental science at Lehman, it's very specific. When is what is where, right? It looks like there's not that much left to do. It could be a great major. You got to be careful about what's offered in which semesters to make it work out.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Calvin. Now let's do a run through. Like, if you can please do a run through the medical school application process. And I guess what are some of the misconceptions that people have, and then you can sprinkle some of like your opinions on DO schools versus MD schools, all that like in there.
Yeah. So let's start there. Osteopathic schools are a great option as far as I'm concerned. I think applying to both makes a lot of sense. Nowadays, part of the confusing thing is 40 years ago, if you were an osteopathic physician, you faced a lot of kind of bias. The allopathic physicians might look down your noses at you, and you might not even be allowed in certain hospitals. And that's not true anymore. They share residencies. If you go to an osteopathic school, you can apply for an allopathic residency and vice versa. They share the match process. So, that part's fine. And if you look at the list, I think I'm right on this. If I'm wrong, everybody will know I'm wrong because they'll go look it up on this podcast. But I think I'm right on. I believe there's now been an osteopathic physician who was the head of the American Medical Association at one point. I know that for some reason, presidents seem to love osteopathic physicians. A good fraction of presidents, Democrat and Republican in recent years, have had DOs as their personal physicians, right? There have been heads of major hospitals with allopathic physicians, osteopathic physicians working for them. So there aren't the same kind of barriers there used to be. It's just a different kind of style, right? It's more look at the big picture than focus in on what the issue is. Allopathic is a little more start with the issue, work your way out to find out what is affecting it, right? They both kind of get to the same place, but they do it a little differently. And yes, there are some specialties that are harder to get into if you're an osteopathic physician. That is still true. And so you do have to kind of do your research and look into what specialties you're interested in, and the matches involved. There's no specialties closed to DOs, but there are some that are harder to do. So that's a great option. So mistakes people make. Well, the number one mistake people make during the application process is variations on applying too late in the cycle. It makes a huge difference. Huge. A student who might have gotten 4 interviews and 2 acceptances if they had sent in their application in June, who sends in their application in November will not get a single interview, right? Even if they send it in September, they may not get a single interview. It is a gigantic factor. And the things that I was talking about before for during application year, you got to set yourself all up to be ready for all this kind of sequencing. You got to have time to do the secondaries. You got to do all those kinds of things. So,
yeah,
that's the biggest, most common mistake. I'm going to mention the next thing. I don't know whether to call it a mistake or just who people are, but there are people who are kind of jerks. And it comes out in the application year in a way that it didn't before. Now, I think there are people where they can learn not to be so much a jerk. And if they can learn that, the medical schools may take a look at them. There are some people who are super jerks. Maybe you're done, right? But you know, you don't want to be, you know, not replying to schools that are contacting you to offer you interviews and stuff, right? You don't want to be yelling at the receptionist the morning that you do have an interview.
Ooh,
you don't want to be offered a campus tour and go on a campus tour with a group of other prospective students, and while the medical student is showing you around the campus, you're just on your phone the whole time, right?
Yeah.
You know, yeah, absolutely, right? You know, there's just, you don't want your personal statement to talk about how selfish doctors are. Doctors are going to be this. You don't want, and you're going to be the one to fix everything, right? Well, you know, there are other people working on this problem.
Yeah.
You don't want your personal statement to talk about how dumb nurses are.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
I know. I mean, I've seen all of these things. So there's this
really? That's a
yeah.
Wow.
Heard
Okay.
of some of them are ones I've heard from admission people. Some of them are ones I've seen directly.
Wow.
But yes, I mean, all this kind of stuff comes up. You know, it's by the way, earlier than that, you know, you don't want to establish a pattern of broadly being a jerk, like standing up your pre-health.
Oh man.
Right? And if you do miss an appointment because something it happens, right? People have emergencies. Email right away once you can and apologize for missing the appointment, right? You know, these are, I'm not kidding when I say the following thing, okay? It's going to sound like I'm kidding, but I'm not kidding. There are sociopaths who are perfectly good physicians, right? Sociopathy is a diagnosable condition, and you can be a perfectly good physician, right? The thing is, if somebody is a sociopath, they can learn what expected behavior is. They may not have genuine kind of that sort of emotional response, empathy, but they can learn what is expected in those situations. Learn what is expected in those situations, right? So, you know, and then it can be fine, right? I mean, that is, you know, people with various kinds of you know, who are not neurotypical in various ways can make great physicians, but they have to understand the ways in which they're not neurotypical and what, you know, which ways they're going to get accommodations and which ways they are going to make accommodations to the people they're working with, right? And how to make that work, and then it can be terrific. But you cannot just ignore the fact that you have issues. So yes, so absolutely. You know, those are the big mistakes that are made during the application cycle. By far and away, the highest is applying too late.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Calvin. So, what is your advice for people in gap year? You know, as we wrap this up? Yeah.
Yeah, so you cannot spend your whole gap year. Well, this is really 2 gap year people, but we can talk about 1 gap year period, so 2. But I'm going to first give my advice to 2 gap year people. You cannot spend the whole gap year studying for the MCAT. There are 2 problems with that. One is it's not going to work. You cannot study for the MCAT for more than 6 months and have it be effective. I mean, you can take it twice and study once and then go and study again. But you can't have a plan to do more than 6 months because the stuff you did at the beginning isn't going to stick. Right? You need to be able to do it in 6 months. But the other thing is the med schools don't want to know that's what you were doing with your gap year. I mean, it can be part of what's going on in your gap year, but they sometimes call it a growth year. You need to be doing things that leave you a better applicant, that you'll be a better med student, that you're better prepared for medical school, that you're better prepared to be a physician eventually during that year. Now, it can be something a little off the beaten path, right? Certainly there are things you can be doing. You can gain clinical experience, you can be doing research, you can be doing stuff out in the community, you can be taking more courses if you need to prove something, if your grades aren't so good or whatever. There's a bunch of things you can be doing. But I remember talking to some admissions people, and they were telling a story about somebody who in their gap year had an opportunity to play professional baseball in Europe and was worried that if they went and they played professional baseball in Europe, that it would interfere with their ability to do interviews. This was pre-pandemic, by the way, so it wasn't like everything was already Zoom. And it would look a little funny, and what's this guy going to? Every single admissions person from a medical school, this is the panel that I saw in one place, every single person said, oh my God, you should do it. Right? You're only going to get 1 chance to go play professional baseball in Europe. How cool is this, right? And yes, there are all these great skills that you get. You're getting a different sort of cultural exposure. You are going through this discipline. But basically, it's like, you are just going to, the rest of your life, this is an experience that you're going to be able to talk about. Or if you don't do it, you're going to be like, I could have been a professional baseball player here. Right? It's perfectly fine to do that for only 1 year. And they said, we will work out the interview part. We will do remote interviews. We'll schedule around. We'll do something. Because that is a really good reason to be off in Europe. And so, absolutely that kind of thing can be going on during a gap year. If you have weaknesses, address the weaknesses, right? But, you've got these other kinds of things that can go on too. What you don't want to do is be, sitting at home, spending all your time studying the MCAT and doing some chores and, whatever, right? If you're playing video games in your basement, it better be because you're a competitive tournament player. I mean, if you do it to relax, it's fine. But if you're spending, 30 hours a week, if you're a competitive video game player, that's fine. NYIT-COM has a program for esports injuries. This is one of their focuses. They have an esports team.
Interesting.
If you are a professional video game player, apply to NYIT-COM, right? There is a place for you. But if you're just fooling around, relax. Take your 10 hours of me time of self-care, right? Be doing something to grow during your gap years.
Right. Thank you for that, Dr. Calvin. I mean, we've had a broad conversation today covering so many topics, and your insights has been very rewarding. Thank you. I know that people listening are like very appreciative of your time. So, I mean, guys, join me to say a big thank you to Dr. Calvin. Because he's very busy. So to give us like a whole hour of his time, that's
you are welcome. As I say, this helps spread the word. It's great. It's part of what I'm doing. You talked about that time management. I have Monday mornings blocked off for things like this.
Thank you.
I've got a slot. I don't have to think, oh my goodness, how do I fit this in? Right. I've got a slot where it's like, if something like this comes up, I can slot it in on Monday morning.
Yeah. By the way, guys, Dr. Calvin has written books. One which includes like Cartoon Physics, a graphic novel guide to solving physics problems, which is like a great book you can get. I'll be sure to put the links in the description. So get that. Oh yeah, there we go. And there's one also talking about like women in physics and like their remarkable discoveries from 1903 to 1963. So I'll be sure to put that in the description. So make sure you get your hands on one of those. Okay, or both actually. There we go. Yeah, that's the book.
As long as you bring these down, right?
Yeah.
This is not one you can buy. This is not one you want to buy. But you know, at some point, I did get my PhD.
Oh wow,
That's
that's nice. Yeah, yeah, guys.
So,
I will. Dr. Calvin, is that on Amazon as well? Your dissertation, or that's probably on a PubMed or something?
no, you'd have to order it from a library somewhere, and nobody will want to read it, right? I mean, it's kind of
okay.
But it is fun that I got that up there.
Yeah, that's nice.
So
for sure. Yeah, guys.
I'll give you a crazy one that I think is on Amazon.
Okay.
Which is a little obscure book that is only available as an ebook, right?
Okay.
But it's I can just a second because I've even forgotten what the title is.
No problem.
I'll find it. This is something I did with my students back at Sarah Lawrence, where I had them all tell stories about themselves, and we put it into this and we put them into this. There it is. We collected them into this book. Let me share it to you. The stories. There's a story from me in here. Very kind of humanizing stories just from their lives and that sort of thing. It's a lot of fun. $1.02.
$1.02, guys. Less than a cup of coffee.
That's the bargain one. And so there's a kind of fun one that is off the beaten path a little bit.
Yeah. All right, guys. Also, if you're a Lehman student, all right, and you're a Premed listener, be sure to take Dr. Calvin's like med school admissions process class. Okay. And because he goes into more details like than what we just went through like in that class. It's a really helpful class, so be sure to check that out as well. Lesson of today: be sure to have a good relationship with your professors, especially your pre-med advisors or pre-health advisors. Until next time we meet, it's bye for now. Bye, guys.
Bye.